Hey, I'm Ben with Ride More Heavy Duty Truck Parts. Today we're going to be tearing the top half off this Cummins ISB 6.7. It's got a hole in the block, broken camshaft, so we'll see what caused it all and go from there. Alright, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the EGR valve off. This one is broken, the cap got snapped off, so we'll get it off real quick. It just pops right off. Alright, next we're going to take off your intake horn here. So it's just got 6 bolts, hold it in. There. That one out. And then it'll just slide right out of there usually. You have your hose attached at the bottom. You can just undo that clamp, pop that right off there. This one might slide right out. Alright, next we're going to get the fuel filter housing off. We'll spin the filter off, then we'll get the dipstick out of the way. Undo the lines. Spin that right off. Get dipstick, bracket. They'll fold down out of the way for now. There is a line on this side, and there's usually a line on the other side. This one right here, but due to it being burned, the line is no longer there. And we'll get the 3 bolts that hold the bracket on. One there. One above it. Third one that holds the brackets for the fuel line. Take that out. Get your bracket out of the way. That. And your fuel filter housing bracket pops right out of the way. Alright, next we're going to be getting the fuel lines off the rail. So we got all the connections here that go from the rail to the head. We're just going to get all those out of the way to get the fuel rail off. So some of them you will need to use a wrench on to get onto. And they are pretty tight. You might have to get the other lines out of the way to get those ones. Get this line for the crankcase breather out of the way just to make it easier. So and now you have all your lines off. Alright, now we're going to get our fuel rail off. We have 4 bolts that hold it down, 2 in the back, 2 in the front. We're going to do the fuel line that feeds in from the pump and the other fuel line that feeds in from the pump. So we just got this quick connect here. Break this line free. And it'll lift right up out of there. Alright, now we're going to take our intake heater plate off. We only got 4 bolts left holding it on. All the other bolts that held it on were holding other parts on. So it just... And this will just come right up off there, and then your intake plate is off. Alright, next we're going to start moving around the other side of the engine. So we're going to take our EGR Crossover Tube off. It's got 2 bolts up here on a bracket on the front. And then 2 bolts that hold it into the EGR Cooler. And that'll take the crossover tube up out of the way for you. Alright, next we're going to work on removing the EGR Cooler. You got 1 8mm bolt up here. That out of the way for this line. That should slide right out of there. Someone RTV'd that one in there. And we have another one over here. That one's pretty bent too. We might have to pry that out of there a little bit. For now though, we'll get the two 10 mils on the top bracket. Wrong socket. And then the two 16 mils on the back. Holding it. Need a bigger gun. Now we can see if that line will come out or if they bent it in there too hard. If not, we might have to just take the whole line with it. So we took the whole line with it. Usually it'll pop out there, but someone gasket makered it right into the EGR cooler. All right, next we're gonna get the alternator bracket and the EGR bracket off, so that way we can get to the exhaust manifold. All right, next we're gonna get our exhaust manifold off. Someone has already taken the turbo off this one, so we don't have to remove that. I'm gonna start with removing the bolt for the exhaust temp sensor bracket. Just so that'll be undone, that'll come with the manifold. And then we're gonna take our exhaust manifold studs out, and that'll come right off. Oh. Over to the other side here. And the final one. And there you have your manifold off. All right, now that we've gotten everything off both sides of the head, we're gonna go ahead and start going down from the top down. So we're gonna take our crankcase breather hose off. Pull that off. This one was cut, so we won't need that anymore. Oh, I lost my 8mm socket over here. Okay, now we'll get our 8 bolts out. Once those are out, undo your oil cap. That'll allow the cover to come off your crankcase filter. This one was broken, so it's got a bunch of stuff that fell on here. Get that out of the way. And then your crankcase filter pops right out of your valve cover. Now we'll get our valve cover off. It's got 6 bolts that hold it down on. Sometimes, the wiring harness will stick to it, not make it want to come up. So you just gotta go around and break the seal. That'll come right off. All right, next we're gonna take off our valve cover gasket / wiring harness. It's got 2 bolts each that hold the wires to the top of the injectors. Just 8mm bolts. Once all your wires are undone, you can just lift it right up out. Just getting caught a bit. And that'll come right off. Next, we're gonna get the spacer plate off. 7 10mm bolts right down the middle. Should just come right up. Sometimes they need a little help. Find somewhere. Yep. Break the seal of the gasket and it'll come right out of there. Alright, next we're going to remove our rocker arms. This one we did notice already had a loose rocker arm where the bridge had already fallen off. And then also this one, you can definitely tell someone didn't change their oil near as much as you should. A lot of sludge build up on the top here. So, but for now we'll remove our 10mm bolts. Actually, we're also missing a push rod right there. So definitely some major failure with this one. But we'll take our 10mm bolts out and get the rocker arms off. Then you can just pick these up. They will come apart separately. The rocker arms will come off the pedestals. Usually just like to leave them together. There's another broken piece of a push rod that just fell off as I lifted that arm up. And then once your rocker arms are out, pull all your bridges off. And then all your push rods can come out. Obviously missing one on cylinder 1 there. The top part came off cylinder 2's push rod. And there's all your push rods out. Alright, next we're going to work on removing our injectors. So first thing we're going to get our nozzles out that go into the side of the injector. I did spray these ones a minute ago just to let some fluid get down in there, hopefully break up anything holding them in. So that one actually came out pretty smooth. Sometimes they can fight you, sometimes they come out nice and easy like this one. That one came out. So we only got one that's really stuck in there. So what I've found works the best is if you grab a fuel line and screw a fuel line back onto it and kind of give you some extra force to get it out of there. Now we'll move on to taking out the 8mm bolts that hold the injector in. Alright, so now we'll get the 8mm for the injectors out. Alright, so getting the injectors out, you pull the hold down off the top. There's a little groove on the side, usually with just a little bit of force from a pry bar, you can get them to pop. Sometimes they will be pretty stuck in there. Just takes a little bit more. That one's in there pretty good. Could be on the cylinder that got broken connecting rod in the bottom. Oh. And obviously you don't want to drop them like that, but being this engine is already heavily damaged and we're not reusing them, it doesn't really matter as much. That one, pretty well in there. That one we might have to wait till the head's off to see why it's stuck in there. Alright, now we're going to take out the 26 head bolts, hold the head on. Just usually start on one end, work my way down. And with those out, we'll grab our crane with the chain. Hook onto the lifting hooks. And you want to try and lift it as evenly and smoothly as possible, so that way you don't break the head where the dowel pins lay. I like to take a pry bar, find somewhere I can, just lift up on it a little bit. Make sure it's freed from the dowel pins so it won't crack the corners of the head. And you can just come right up with it. And you have your head off. Alrighty, so that completes the teardown of the top half on this Cummins ISB 6.7. We'll see you guys next week, and we'll be tearing down the bottom half of the engine, see what went wrong down there.